Good morning. Welcome to the Genesis Client Services webinar. My name is Victoria O'Connor. I'm one of the counselors here, and I'll introduce my co-leader.
Hi, I'm Belinda Cardwell. I'm also a counselor at Genesis.
And we are going to be leading this English coping skills webinar today, talking about some education and also practicing a coping skill. So just as a reminder, this presentation is for educational purposes, and please consider your own situation and safety concerns before putting into practice any of the ideas talked about today. Safety is very important to us. We want to make sure that you are watching this in a safe place where only safe people can hear it. So that means maybe you should wear headphones as a potential way to also ensure that no one else can hear what you're watching. And also maybe consider clearing your browser history after watching this video if someone monitors your phone or your computer. If you need to leave the live Zoom webinar quickly, remember that you will need to end or click end and leave the meeting a couple of times and close the Zoom page. Also, confidentiality is also very important to us. So for that reason, we ask that you do not use the chat feature on Zoom. If you do use that chat feature, your name and comments will be seen by anyone watching the live webinar and also the video recording that will be on YouTube later. If you are watching this on YouTube, we ask that you don't leave any comments, as those comments and your name would also be seen by everyone else who watches the video. If you do have questions about anything that we talk about today, we want you to reach out to us and let us know. So please contact us. Here's our contact information, and it will also be later at the end of this presentation as well. We don't monitor or respond to any comments or questions left on the YouTube video page. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, the best way to contact us directly is through phone or email here if you do need any help. This video is not meant to be a replacement for crisis support. So if you are in a crisis situation, if you do need emergency shelter or safety planning due to domestic violence, please call our 24-hour hotline number. That number is 214-946-4357. If you would like to sign up for counseling at Genesis or want to talk to a counselor about your situation, you can also call our outreach office. That phone number is 214-389-7700. And we also want everyone to make sure that you have some support and some crisis support if you need it. Here are some helpful phone numbers and some hotline numbers. Again, the Genesis 24-hour hotline number is here. Also, the National Domestic Violence Hotline phone number is here, and they also have a chat feature on their website. So if it's not safe for you to talk to somebody on the phone, you could also chat with someone online at thehotline.org. The National Suicide Hotline number is also here as well, just for some other resources in case you might need them. Okay. So today we are going to be focusing on the CBT Triangle. This is a helpful tool to help learn the relationship between thoughts, feelings, and actions or behaviors. We oftentimes teach this in our phase 1 open groups and also, with clients, with kids, with adults. We think this is a really important and helpful tool to learn so that you can start to understand what might be going on with your thoughts and feelings. I also wanted to highlight there is a YouTube video on our YouTube page, which is called Genesis Women's Shelter Client Services. You can type that into YouTube and find our YouTube page. We also did a video on June 5th that was called Unhelpful Thinking Patterns. And that might also be another good resource if you didn't see that video, just to go back and watch that as another way to help understand some potentially unhelpful thoughts. So the CBT Triangle, what is this? I'm going to try to use my pointer here. Hopefully this works, but basically something happens, right, in our life. Some event might happen And then this kind of diagram shows us that we have thoughts and then feelings and then we do something after. So very first, like I said, something is going to happen. There's some sort of event. So for example, maybe it's I trip and fall. That might be my something happens. After that, then I'm going to have some sort of thoughts. I'm going to tell myself something. I'm going to think something. Then after that, you can see this arrow, it's going to lead to some sort of feeling. So after I tell myself something, after I have a thought, then I will have a feeling. And remember, feelings are, there's lots of different ranges of feelings. You know, there can also be kind of feelings on a spectrum too. Like there can be angry or, you know, maybe more irritated all the way to enraged, right? So kind of a very big range of feelings as well. We want you to start to think about what are all those different feelings that you might be experiencing and starting to name those different types of feelings. Then from feelings, it goes to down here, some sort of behavior or action. So after I tell myself something and then I feel something, I'm going to do something or I'm going to do some sort of action. After this action, then you can see this arrow comes right back to thoughts. So kind of the idea of this triangle, you can see all these arrows. This helps us see that after each one of these things, it's going to influence the next thing. And then that influences the next part of the triangle. And it all kind of repeats itself in a cycle. So after something happens, you know, again, I'm going to tell myself something, which is going to lead to a feeling, which is then going to lead me to do something. And that's going to probably influence what I'm telling myself again, which is then going to influence my feelings and then, you know, keep repeating that pattern. So let's look at an example here. I have been watching the Dallas Mavericks play recently, and so I was thinking of basketball when I created this example. So let's say my example event, I miss a lot of shots during a basketball game. So if that's my event, you know, after that happens, I'm going to tell myself something. So we come down here to a thought. If I'm missing a lot of shots at a basketball game, I might tell myself like, I'm no good at basketball, or, you know, maybe another example might be I'm letting my teammates down, or I'm not very good at this, you know, something like that. So if my thought is I'm no good at basketball, then you can see these might be some possible feelings I might have if that's my thought. If I'm telling myself I'm no good at basketball, I might feel sad, disappointed in myself. I would probably feel embarrassed too, embarrassed that, you know, I'm not good, that I'm missing a lot of shots, and I might feel ashamed, or I might feel that feeling of shame. So if this is my feeling, you can see here are some possible actions or behaviors that might happen if that's how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling sad, disappointed, embarrassed, maybe ashamed, I might just stop practicing. You know, I might in my head just think, what's the point? You know, I'm no good. I'm feeling embarrassed, so I'm just going to stop practicing. There's no point in practicing. Maybe I might decide to quit the team. Right? If I'm feeling really disappointed or ashamed, I might decide I'm just going to quit the team. Maybe I might cry. That's also an action or a behavior. If I'm feeling sad, disappointed in myself, maybe I cry. Or, you know, maybe I might miss more shots in the future. If I'm feeling very embarrassed or ashamed of myself, that might even lead me to, you know, perform even worse than I was performing before. So this is kind of an example of, you can see where this thought, this original thought here, influenced those feelings, which then influenced what I did afterwards. And then you can see, you know, if these are my behaviors, if I stop practicing or if I quit the team, you know, that's again going to influence my next thought, which is probably something like, I shouldn't play basketball ever again, or basketball's not my sport, or something like that. So in the CBT triangle, one way that we can think about changing this, if we want to change our feelings or change what we're doing, it's really to focus here on this thought. So that's where a lot of the CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, that's where a lot of time is spent on really focusing on what are the thoughts that we're telling ourselves and starting to maybe shift and change those thoughts. So here's an example of how I could change my feelings and the behaviors that I might do by changing my thoughts. So the same event up here. If I miss a lot of shots during a basketball game, what if instead of I'm no good at basketball, what if instead my thought is I need to spend more time practicing? So that is this example here. I need to spend more time practicing. So then if that's my thought, my feeling is probably, I might still feel disappointed that maybe I'm not making as many shots as I want to. I'm still might be feeling disappointed, maybe sad, but I also might feel more motivated if I'm telling myself I need to spend more time practicing. I also think this feeling might be just a little bit neutral too. I need to spend more time practicing is not necessarily blaming myself. That's kind of just a neutral statement. So I might also feel neutral. So then from this feeling, you can see some possible actions or behaviors I might do if this is how I'm feeling. Maybe I schedule more practice time and I actually, practice. I actually try to make, work on free throws or whatever. Maybe I seek help from other people or, get some advice from some, coaches or other friends. Maybe I get that advice or seek help as a way because I'm feeling motivated. And then if these are my actions, my next thought is probably going to be something a little bit more kind to myself or a little bit more neutral. Maybe I've done a good job practicing, or I'm proud of myself for practicing, or maybe it's I hope this practice helps in my next game or something like that. I think in this cycle, and noticing our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. It sounds really easy kind of when we draw it out here like this on a triangle. I think in reality, what oftentimes happens is I think we tend to notice up here our feelings more easily or more quickly than maybe we notice those thoughts. Personally, I tend to notice my feelings before maybe my thoughts. So I might start noticing I'm feeling more nervous or I'm feeling more anxious or more sad or angry before I maybe notice what I'm telling myself. And so that's one thing we're going to show you today is another way to kind of stop yourself and really reflect on what were those thoughts that might be leading to these feelings, or what might be going on before I'm feeling this way. What could be those thoughts that are leading to that feeling? So here's another kind of practice. If you're a visual person or if you like to write things down, this is a really helpful tool. You could just draw these 4 boxes like this and some arrows. And really, noticing when something happens, maybe you just sit down and start to, think about and notice and write down, okay, when something happens, I tell myself something. What is that thought? What do I tell myself after that thing happened? Then what did that thought lead to, what that feeling was. So after I tell myself something, then I feel something, and writing down all of the different types of feelings that you might be having. And then those actions, I do something. So what do you do after feeling that way? What are those actions or behaviors that you might notice later? I think this is, a little bit easier to do maybe after the fact. We'll touch on that in a second. It might be hard to catch yourself in the middle of, square 2 right here, or this square. It might be the case that, hours later, or even a few days later, you might think, okay, why was this, situation bothering me so much? Or, I've noticed I was having these really strong feelings. Let me sit down and jot this down and kind of figure out like maybe what was going on in my head. What was I telling myself that was leading to these feelings or potential actions that maybe were keeping you stuck. So again, the goal of CBT therapy, but also a lot of counseling too, the first step is to notice those thoughts and to really notice what you're telling yourself. The next step and the next goal is then to start to change potentially unhelpful or potentially negative thoughts. You can do this practice for like any situation too. So maybe it's also positive situation. So for example, something happens, maybe it's, a coworker tells me I did a good job on something. So then I tell myself something. Maybe that thought is, I'm proud of myself, or I worked really hard, or my hard work is paying off. I feel something. Maybe I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling confident. I feel proud of myself. I feel good. I feel neutral. And then I do something, maybe I keep doing those things that led to that success, or I keep, feeling good about myself. So then I try harder. I work harder too. So you can see how this, kind of chain of thoughts and feelings and actions, this also applies to positive situations too. And again, the goal is to really look at in this box or in that triangle, the thoughts. So when you notice I'm telling myself something negative, or maybe there's a thought there that's not so helpful, that's what we want to try to focus on and notice, and maybe start to change and challenge that thought. So I do just want to highlight for a second that trauma does impact thoughts, and trauma impacts thinking. So it's very common for survivors of trauma to have negative beliefs about themselves, others, and the world. This is actually a symptom of PTSD. So it's very common for survivors to say things and to have thoughts like, it's my fault that this happened, or maybe a thought like, I'm a bad wife, or I deserved this, or maybe a thought that the world is unsafe, or people will always hurt me. These are examples of types of thoughts that are actually a result of that trauma and a symptom of PTSD. Also, our brains like shortcuts. Our brains like to have patterns that we can use to help us stay safe in the future and to help protect us. And so this is why sometimes we do develop negative thoughts at the time of the traumatic event. Your survival mode actually kicks in. If you remember a couple weeks ago, we talked about how trauma impacts the brain. And one way that the brain responds during a traumatic moment is that your thinking brain up here, your prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain stops working in that moment. So that means you're not able to logically think about things or logically process things. And so again, that's why you might develop thoughts like, if I had done this, then this wouldn't have happened. That's your brain trying to protect yourself and trying to have shortcuts and use shortcut thoughts to help protect yourself in the future. Another way that trauma impacts thoughts, especially related to domestic violence, we know that verbal and emotional abuse can be very, very hurtful and can actually affect self-esteem very greatly. And so, ongoing verbal and emotional abuse, that can actually lead survivors to start to believe those negative things that are said to them. Maybe the abusive partner's words start to become your own words or your own thoughts about yourself. That's very common to see. So how can we cope with negative thoughts? When you notice, you've done that kind of CBT triangle, you've jotted down some thoughts and you're noticing that you might have some negative thoughts, here are some potential practices to cope with that. So journaling is one really helpful practice. So like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be maybe more helpful to do this when you are feeling more calm or you are feeling more emotionally safe, if you're in a safe situation. Because like I said, in that trauma moment, or if there's a true, like a safety concern or a dangerous moment, your brain is not going to be able to think about, what am I telling myself? What do I feel? What am I doing? Your brain's not going to be able to do that because your thinking brain is not accessible in that moment. So later, maybe once you're feeling more calm or emotionally safe, practice writing out your thoughts, feelings, and actions. So, use that triangle if you liked the triangle, or just like the boxes, kind of, writing to yourself, like something happened, what happened, draw an arrow. What did I tell myself? Arrow. What did I feel? Arrow. What did I do after? And even just noticing and practicing that, reflecting on that, is a really, really helpful tool, so that you can start to notice those negative thoughts. And then you can start to potentially ask yourself thought challenging questions. Practicing is really important. It's going to be really hard to challenge those thoughts if you're not aware of them first. And so that's why really practicing that, practice writing them down and practicing noticing is so important. So here's some examples of some thought challenging questions too. For example, is this thought 100% accurate? If we go back to my example, if I'm no good at basketball, maybe actually I'm a really good defensive player. So maybe I missed a lot of shots that actually I was doing really well at defense. So maybe that is not 100% accurate. Another way to ask this is what's the evidence for and what's the evidence against this thought? Is there another way to look at the situation or event? Just really asking yourself, is there another perspective? Is this thought helpful? Maybe you might notice some of the thoughts that you're telling yourself are not very kind or not very helpful for you, or they're, maybe causing more problems. So really just noticing that. What would I say to a friend or a loved one who said this thought? Oftentimes, especially I think women, we tend to be more hard on ourselves and to have more higher expectations on ourselves. And so if you're having some sort of thought about like, I'm not good enough or something like that, what would you say to a friend or a loved one who is saying that? And chances are it's probably a lot more kind than what you're telling yourself. Is my thought an unhelpful thinking pattern? So like I said, we did a video on this covering some different types of unhelpful thinking patterns. Everybody uses unhelpful thinking patterns, for example, like jumping to conclusions or minimizing or maximizing, all or nothing thinking or black and white thinking. Those are just some examples. And so really starting to notice too, like, are these thoughts falling into some of these patterns that maybe I can start to challenge? Okay. And then here's some other exercises to help cope with negative thoughts. There's something called a container exercise. Belinda is going to lead us through this in a moment, but just to kind of explain, this is a helpful tool when maybe your thoughts are feeling too overwhelming or they're feeling like really strong, like a lot. There's an exercise you can do to kind of put them away until you can get to them later, or when you're feeling more calm to deal with those thoughts or to look at those thoughts or reflect, putting them away until you can get to them later. And then finally, I just wanted to also point out that attending counseling is a really important way of helping with negative thoughts. So this is a counseling goal for, most counselors and most counseling here at Genesis too, that we are going to be really focusing and looking at some different thoughts that you might be telling yourself and helping you become more aware of those thoughts. And then also potentially helping you challenge those thoughts that might be a little bit inaccurate or not fully capturing the whole experience, or maybe those thoughts that aren't so kind, helping you start to challenge those. We actually do a type of therapy here at Genesis called cognitive processing therapy, or CPT, and this addresses stuck points, which is just another way to say negative thoughts or unhelpful thoughts that might be keeping you stuck or might be feeling like you are preventing you from that healing process. So really helping address those stuck points and teaching clients thought challenging skills to help, kind of break those thoughts apart and just really examine and really see if there's another way of thinking about the situation. I just want to validate again that it is really difficult to change thoughts. And so if you do notice that maybe you are having some more negative thoughts, it is hard to just change them. Like I said, the goal is, right, we just notice and we just change the thoughts, but that's like a lot easier said than done, and is definitely a lot harder than it sounds. And so we really want you to know that we are here to support you through counseling, and that this is definitely a goal that can be addressed and worked on with the help of a counselor. Belinda, anything else that I missed?
Well, the one thing I wanted to add is that there is the 3 points on the triangle, and Victoria covered about the emotions, that maybe you stop at the emotions and work backwards to the thought. I also sometimes find it helpful to start at the behavior and like, I don't want to do this. What led me to do that behavior? So at any points of that triangle, you can kind of reevaluate and try to reassess and change, so you can have the most helpful thinking pattern to lead to the most helpful behavior. So just whether it's your thought or your emotion or your behavior, any one of those points of the triangle can be changed or reevaluated by looking at as on the continuum of how an event follows a thought, or a thought follows an event, which then you have your emotion, then you have your behavior. So any of those points can be reevaluated. And if this is a new skill for you, it's like any skill, it's going to take practice and it's going to feel a little awkward at times, but keep at it because it really does make a big difference if you want to help challenge your thoughts. So
Great.
thank you, Victoria. As Victoria said, I'm going to do the container exercise today, and this exercise helps us with those thoughts that we find distressing or uncomfortable. And we're going to put the thoughts in a container for safekeeping, because we're going to come back and look at those thoughts and reevaluate them. But sometimes our thinking is just too much for us, or our emotions are too much, or behavior is something we want to change. So we need to kind of step back and put them in a place that we can come back later when maybe the event's passed and we're feeling a little more calm, or we're journaling, and we want to pull those thoughts back out and see what happened and what we can do to change them. So we're going to picture a container, and the container I've got for us today is an old antique chest, and it's sitting in a garden, and it has a lock on it. You might need to kind of wiggle the lock a little bit, but it can be locked. And obviously it's going to be heavy, and this particular container will be large, but you can make any container that you want to have to put your thoughts in it. It could be something you already have as a container, or be something that you're going to visualize. But you need to think about your container and how secure it's going to be, because it needs to hold these thoughts so they can be looked at later and not continue to come in and distress you throughout the day. So just think about your container. What's it going to look like? What color is it going to be? How big is it going to be? How heavy? What's it going to feel like? Is it going to be made out of wood or metal or paper? Like I said, is it something you already own, or is it something you're going to visualize? That's kind of the first part of the container exercise. And then you also want to think about where you're going to put this container. Where is it going to be most secure for you? Is it going to be in the room that you normally stay in, or is it going to be somewhere else you visualize? So you're going to put your container in another place that you've been visualizing, or is it going to be in some place a room you don't go into in the house very often, but you know it's safe? So that's kind of two parts of the container. So we need to know what our container is going to look like, how strong it's going to be, what it can hold, and also where is it going to go. So having said that, we're going to actually do a container exercise, and we're going to put our thoughts in the container that we visualized. So I want you to sit back and relax and close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. And when I notice where you're sitting, maybe you're sitting on a chair, maybe you're sitting on a couch, maybe you're on a bed, but I would just want you to notice how you're sitting. Notice the texture of the fabric of the seat. Maybe you've got some support on your back. Maybe you've got your arms at an armrest. Just sit comfortably and notice how your body feels. Now I want you to allow your attention to notice any disturbance or tension or discomfort that you are feeling. So go through your body and allow your body to notice any disturbance, tension, or discomfort you are feeling. Allow it to show up as a color. It could be one color, or it could be many color. And I want you to notice where inside the color rests. After you've noticed all your colors, I want you to gather these pieces of colors together. And I want you to notice how all the pieces come together easily and adhere to one another easily. And they form a group. I want you to bring all these pieces of color together into one group. Now scan inside again, looking for any other pieces of color that are remaining, and bring those into the group. One final scan to look for any pieces of color that are remaining. So take this group of color and shape it into a ball, and notice that it easily takes the shape. Then take the ball of color and compress it to a movable size, something that's small and easy to be moved. And notice how it easily compresses. Now I want you to take this ball of color and put it in your container. I want you to secure your container. And again, where are we going to put this container? Are we going to leave it in the room that's in? Or are we going to move it into another room, either physically or imaginarily? Now, step back with your container in place. Does it feel safe and secure? Notice that it is there. It's safe and it's secure and it's away from you. Take a couple deep breaths. In, out, in, and out. And then bring your attention back to the present. So that's one way we can use the container exercise. Sometimes we use it after a session, or sometimes you might be able to use it in between sessions or between groups, just to kind of help you take what's distressing you and put it into a safe place so it can be reevaluated later, but not so much on your top of mind for the day. So that's it for me on the coping skills part. We always try to include a coping skill in these webinars. So I hope you found this one helpful, and I found Victoria's information very helpful and well said. So Victoria, do you have any last thoughts?
No, just thank you so much for watching, and our contact information is here. Please reach out to us if you do have any questions about anything that was said today, or if you want to talk to us about your specific situation. Like we said, we are also, you can call the Genesis office, or you can call one of us too to ask about counseling options. We are having some phase 1 groups over Zoom right now, so if you are a current client at Genesis, please reach out and ask us about those groups and some options to get some support right now.
Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.